Alrighty, YouTube, Niner Empire, what is going down? Welcome back to another video. So I wanted to come on here and talk about a question that's kind of been lingering throughout the Super Bowl week or throughout the past 2 weeks leading up to the Super Bowl, and that's really how important this game is for Kyle Shanahan and this team. And Kyle Shanahan kind of touched on legacy today in a talk with reporters, and he basically said, you know, there's too much to think about to worry about the legacy side of things. He said that's why we all have to get away when the season ends. That's why I'm glad I don't have to go on the recruiting trail following the season. So he didn't really obviously touch on a lot, but I think obviously a lot of people have been talking about, you know, Kyle Shanahan and how important this game is for his legacy. And really, I guess that kind of brings me to my question. How important is this game for Kyle Shanahan's legacy? And I'll be the first one to say it's very important. This is probably the most important game and the biggest game of Kyle Shanahan's life, because here's the problem. Without a Super Bowl title, Kyle Shanahan will once again be heavily criticized for him not being able to win the big one or to, you know, get over the hump. Without a Super Bowl win, along with that, Brock Purdy then his future then comes into question throughout the media world about you know, the quarterback debate, and that whole quarterback debate thing is probably going to reignite. But if you win the Super Bowl, none of that's being talked about, and you know, everything goes away, right? So, and that's why I say, like, this is by far the biggest game of Kyle Shanahan. It's the biggest game of his coaching career, all in all. Like, he's been to 4 of the past 5 NFC championships. You know, on top of that, he's been to a Super Bowl within that time period. He was a Super Bowl offensive coordinator. He's the offensive coordinator in Atlanta in 2016. So when it comes to Kyle Shanahan, like, this game is massive for him. And it's not only massive for him, but it's just massive for this team, right? Like, everybody knows this team's not going to be around forever. When it comes to the question about the Super Bowl window closing for the Niners, here's the thing. I think the Niners are going to be good for at least like the next 3 years following this year. That core, as long as they keep that core intact with Fred Warner and Kittle and Bosa and McCaffrey, and Debo and all those core guys that you think of when you talk about the 49ers core, like, they're going to always be in the mix. But I think when it comes to this roster, and I've said this, you know, all season and really all week leading up to the Super Bowl, this is the best roster that Kyle Shanahan has ever had. This is one of the best rosters that I've seen as a 49ers fan, and I've been a fan since roughly 2007 when I was 6 years old. So the problem is Kyle Shanahan, like, there's no doubt in my mind that he's going to show up for this moment, right? Like, he's going to come absolutely ready. He's going to have this team ready. This team is hungry as well. Like, this team has been here before. Brock Purdy, McCaffrey, and Trent Williams may have not have been, but we've upgraded since the last Super Bowl, offensively, defensively, whichever way you want to go with it. But you know, the thing is, like, it's the same thing with, like, kind of like, hey, it kind of reminds me of like how Sean McVay was going into his Super Bowl. Like, you know, he was there. They had went in, I believe, 2018 or 2017, I believe that was, and it was the year that they played the Patriots in the Super Bowl and only put up, I believe, 3 points. But then Sean McVay returns to the Super Bowl, and in his second meeting in the Super Bowl, you know, he's able to get over the hump. But I feel like the weeks leading up to that Super Bowl, that same question was lingering with Sean McVay. Like, is he going to do what it takes to get over the hump? Because it was the same situation with Sean McVay. If he wasn't able to win that game, questions would have absolutely been, Sean McVay, he can't win the big one. Can Sean McVay get the Rams over the hump? Like, all those questions would have reignited with Sean McVay had he lost the Super Bowl just a couple years ago. But Sean McVay showed up. The Rams played great, and they ended up winning that Super Bowl, and that pains me to say, because I genuinely think if the Niners were able to get to the Super Bowl that year and they didn't blow that lead against the Rams, I think we're talking about Kyle Shanahan right now potentially getting his second Super Bowl win. But, at the end of the day, like, is there pressure on Kyle Shanahan? Probably, right? Like, this has got to be his year. If we don't, like, the Niners are in a window right now where it's Super Bowl or bust. This roster is going to be different next year. And I'm not saying in terms of, like, drastically, because, we may not have Chase Young and some other, key rotational players. Obviously, we don't know what Brandon Ayuk's going to do. I would like to think the Niners will be smart enough to bring him back and to pay him, but you guys get the point. Like, this team won't be the exact same next year. It's the best team that we've had, and there's a lot, obviously, to say about, how important this game truly is for Kyle Shanahan. But, it's one of those things, like, Kyle Shanahan's going to have pressure going into this game, absolutely, without a doubt. I think Kyle even senses that there's probably some type of pressure. He knows that there's going to be questions about him being able to win the big game. Now, does that really matter? No, because Kyle Shanahan I know he doesn't really give a damn what anybody thinks about him and his team. But it's an interesting thing to talk about. Like, the whole Brock Purdy narrative, with him not being good enough and this and that, there's any other quarterback could come in this system and do this. Like, there's going to be talks about Brock Purdy not being the guy, or being overrated, or, not being good enough to win the Super Bowl. Like, all these questions will start to arise. And, everybody knows that getting to a Super Bowl is one of the hardest things to do. It probably is the hardest thing to do in all of football, in the NFL. But I think the second thing is getting back there. Like, after you've been to the Super Bowl, getting back there is, like, by far the next challenge, of course. And I think 49ers fans understand that. I mean, it's been 4 years since the last Super Bowl, and I can remember it like it was just yesterday, with us, up 10 with 6 minutes and 43 seconds to go. And, we crumbled, and that was that. And I remember seeing the guys walk off the field. I remember what Kittle said on the sideline about being back with a vengeance, and that it's not going to get the best of him. Like, it kind of brings me back to my point, too, like, questioning if the 49ers are going to come ready. Like, there is no doubt in my mind, guys like George Kittle, guys like Trent Williams, Christian McCaffrey, Fred Warner, like, these guys are going to want this win. Nick Bosa, even, Deebo Samuel. These guys know what it felt like to, walk off that field in 2020 after losing the Super Bowl, and they're going to be back with the vengeance, like, no doubt about that. Like, they're going to come ready to play and the whole 9 yards. But, at the end of the day, man, like, this is an important game for Kyle. And do I think if Kyle loses this game, should we move on from him? Like, I know a lot of people have kind of been talking about that. I've seen some Niners fans, kind of giving their 2 cents on how Kyle Shanahan should be reconsidered if we lose this Super Bowl and things of that nature. I'm not saying that, because what Kyle Shanahan has done over the last 5 years, any NFL franchise that is a bottom barrel team right now would love to be in. Like, they would love to be in our situation. And do I think that they can reconsider Kyle Shanahan? I don't think so. Now, obviously that always comes kind of at a cost, because obviously, depending on how it goes, like, if there's some stuff that happens in the game where Kyle Shanahan completely blows the game, it may not be too out of ordinary to say that, he can't win the big one, or, maybe question his integrity as the head coach. But it's not going to happen, right? And I don't expect it to happen. I don't want it to happen. That's why I genuinely think this go around, like, the Niners will win the Super Bowl. They've gotten here. They've battled the last 2 weeks to get here. 2 come from behind wins in the last 2 weeks. Like, I genuinely think they're going to win this game, and Kyle Shanahan is going to go on and win more Super Bowls with this franchise. I just think Kyle Shanahan and his 2 Super Bowl appearances, one as a coordinator, one as a head coach, like, he knows this feeling better than anybody. And I think this third go around right here, I think they're going to do it. I genuinely do. Like, unbiased, none, like, all of that. I think the Niners will come to play. I think Kyle Shanahan, puts together a masterclass performance, and I think we go in there and get the job done. How we do it, you'll have to stay tuned for the the preview video and obviously hear me out on my thoughts to win the game. But it's a big game, man. It is a massive game for Kyle Shanahan and this team. And I don't doubt one bit that Kyle Shanahan's going to come ready to call his best game ever. He's going to need to. They're going to need to score points. Steve Wilks is going to. He should have already made he knows what going into this game he's going to do. But if something's not working, like, we have to adjust, right? And I think Steve Wilks knows how bad this defense has played over the past couple weeks. And again, there's no doubt in my mind that he's going to come prepared and ready to make adjustments if something's not working. But yeah, man. I mean, again, massive game for Kyle Shanahan. This is a legacy game for Kyle Shanahan. This is the most important game Kyle Shanahan has ever been in. And I think when it comes to that and all these factors with the Niners having a better team this go around and the Chiefs, obviously they're always going to be in the mix and they're always going to be an elite team because they have, one of the greatest quarterbacks ever already. But, I mean, this is a big game for Brock Purdy. To shut a lot of these haters up talking, sideways about him. And most importantly, though, this is like the biggest game, again, of Kyle Shanahan's life. And, if he wins the game, there will no longer be any questions about, Kyle Shanahan as a head coach. And there's never going to be any questions about him not winning the big one. And do I care about these questions arising potentially if the Niners were to lose this game? Absolutely not, because at the end of the day, again, a lot of NFL teams out there that are bottom feeders would love to be in the situation that we currently are in. And you don't want to take anything for granted, but it's like, the Niners have been in win-now mode ever since the last Super Bowl, and it's been 4 years since we've been to the Super Bowl, and this is the second time in the last 4 years we've been to a Super Bowl, and I think it's the most important year of the Kyle Shanahan era. It's the most important game of the Shanahan era. It's just a big game, man. I think a lot of Niners fans probably agree with me on that. Like, Kyle Shanahan's legacy's on the line. It's either people stop questioning him and his ability to coach in the big game and to overcome the hump. It's about Brock Purdy and silencing some of those haters. And no matter if Brock Purdy wins this game, no matter if Kyle Shanahan wins this game, there are going to be people that are talking, right? Like, there's always going to be haters out there talking about Kyle Shanahan and talking about Brock Purdy. But Sean McVay was able to do it just a couple years ago with the Rams in his second Super Bowl as a head coach. And, I think the same thing happens with Kyle Shanahan. I think we go into this game, we're going to come ready to play, and I think we get the job done. So, obviously, let me know what you guys think of how important this game truly is for Kyle Shanahan and this team. And again, I mean, I'm not going to sit up here and say that, I care about what the critics will say, God forbid, again, if we lose this game. But it's just, at the end of the day, it's media, right? Like, these are all going to be talks from the media. But again, at the end of the day, it's going to be hard to get back to where we currently are. I mean, it's going to get harder every single year. Every year is different in the NFL. Not everything always pans out your way. So the Niners are here. They're one game away. They have to take advantage of this opportunity and be crowned world champions. So, but yeah, man, I mean, as far as the question lingering about how important this game is for Kyle, like, this is the most important game of his career. He needs this win bad. Niners fans need this win bad. This has got to be our year. Obviously, let me know your guys' thoughts about this in the comment section down below. But yeah, as always, go Niners. 4 days away from the Super Bowl. Obviously, tomorrow is going to be 3 days away, so it's coming closer and it's getting closer and closer by the minute, by the hour. But yeah, let me know your guys' thoughts. As always, go Niners. I'll see you guys in the next one.